Yes, uh, dear friends, dear liberal friends, welcome to our webinar this evening or day, depending on where you are in the world. We have had the tradition in Liberal International to always something at the same time as the Committee of the Status of Women, which holds its now 68th meeting in New York. It is said this Committee of the Status of Women is said to be the second biggest UN event in New York, gathering people from all over the world, taking stock of what is happening for gender equality, for implementation of the let's say the commitments that UN member states have undertaken. And tonight we have one person with us, State Secretary Martin Andreasson, who is participating in New York, and we are very happy to have you here, Mr. Andreasson. We are also very happy to be able to host Nadia Nahman. I hope I pronounce your family name correctly, from Guinea, but you are now, because of the political situation, you are in London, and I'm here sitting in Finland. My name is Astrid Thors, and I am the chair of Liberal International's Human Rights Committee. As people familiar with Liberal International, we know that we place great importance in our work in general and in the Human Rights Committee in special on the work to promote gender equality. We have three priorities, and gender equality is one of these. We also do an annual survey among member parties how political participation is working within our member parties and compared to the countries where they're working. So we do the so-called WIPI, Women in Political Parties Index, to see if we are better or worse in the context we are working, how we can improve it. And last but not least, we are doing a lot of trainings to empower women in politics. Last December was such a training. Let me say that this webinar is going to be recorded, and it is going to be then put on LI's website so that people can profit from our discussion. And as I said, we know that the theme of this Committee of the Status of Women this year is really very much on the economy, empower Sheconomy, as it's said in some papers. For instance, how impact of gender responsive budgeting has on women's prosperity. It can be noticed that UN Women, who are also one of the main organizers of this 2 weeks of Committee of the Status of Women, have made a fact sheet around how much is done in gender responsive budgeting, how is the policy framework, are there adequate resources, how open is transparent is the budgeting, and how do we study the impact of gender responsive budgeting. Of course, the question of transparency, of course, the question of access to information is always important for liberals, because we find that this access to the information and the result of the budgeting is one of the best ways of fighting corruption and having good governance. I think Martin Andreasson, knowing the country from where you are coming, would agree to that. But with these words, and as I said, we are recording this webinar, and it will then be on our website. So I will give the floor to you, dear panelists, by a short introduction first Mr. State Secretary Andreasson, you are working for the Minister of Gender Equality and Working Life of the government in Sweden. The minister and you being liberals, representing the liberals in the government of Sweden. You have a long political career, head of parliamentary secretariat of Partiet Liberalerna, a former MP, editor-in-chief, and also, I think, one of your long career, I want to mention your long career in anti-discrimination and for LGBT plus rights. So, Mr. State Secretary Andreasson, what would be your examples of gender responsive budgeting, and what are the things we should monitor if the budgeting is successful? And maybe you also have some insights now from the ongoing discussions there in New York. Please, State Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's very good to be here, and it's terrific that the Liberal International organizes a webinar during in parallel to the session of the Commission on the Status of Women, and it's a very, very central theme that is crucial for a successful work for achieving full gender equality. And I would like to start out with some general reflections about how economic equality could be viewed in the context of gender equality in general. And then I will move on to some practical examples from the European and also the Swedish perspective. And to all the participants, I also wish to apologize that for technical reasons, I'm joining this seminar through my mobile phone. So if the picture of me is a bit skimpy, that is the reason. First of all, of course, there are a number of very good reasons for economic equality, for the economic dimension of gender equality. It is a good policy of economic growth to empower women to make their own economic decisions. It is also something that boosts the private sector when women can have the same possibilities as men to form companies and gather risk capital to make their companies grow, etc. But that's not all. These observations are, of course, valid and also relevant. But they are, for me, not the basic argument for gender equality, neither in economic aspects nor in any other. It's a question of human rights. Gender equality is a basic question of human rights, that every individual, regardless of gender, should have the same possibilities to develop his or her own life and decide upon his or her own projects in life according to what he or she thinks are the most important values or aims that the person wishes to focus upon. So it's a question of having the same possibilities, the same options, and of course the same legal rights. But we are not there, as we all know. And economic equality, or the economic dimension of gender equality, the economic dimension is a tenet for a successful gender equality policy. What does this lead to when it comes to gender responsive budgeting, or gender budgeting, if you want to use whichever term you prefer? I would say that the central thing is to bring out the facts to that the first and foremost responsibility for us as liberal politicians should be to make sure that the legislature or the government or the local or municipal government or board, be it on which level you work upon, have that the decision makers have the relevant facts to know what the effects would be upon a certain policy choice when it comes to how it would affect men or women. One basic principle which I would like to emphasize very strongly is that all individual-based statistics that are gathered should always be disaggregated by gender, so that you can see the effects or see the present situation for instance, wage earning, or the amount of hours worked per week, or unemployment, or whatever effects a certain tax reform would have upon men or women. You must have that on the table, and that is a prerequisite for moving forward. Another thing I would like to point out is that, and this is something that is very important in a political context, gender responsive budgeting is an approach and not an answer to what policy choices should be made. What I mean to imply by that is that you can, of course, have a number of choices that you wish to make, depending on whether you whether you are a socialist or a liberal, or whether you belong to the right or the left, or belong to the middle field, depending on what needs are the most urgent for your country, or your region or your municipality. That is a political choice. Sometimes I wish to make this point because sometimes from politicians from the socialist-leaning left, you hear the argument that, for instance, gender-responsive budgeting is the proof that you should always raise taxes, because increased taxes means that you have more funds to channel to, for instance, the healthcare system or the education system or any other social needs which are highly relevant to achieve gender equality. We all know that, but the level of taxes is something that should be politically decided according to your priorities as liberal or socialist or whatever political strand you belong to. So gender responsive, the basic principle is bring out the facts, put them out in the open, make them available to the public, so that the public also can scrutinize the effects on your economic policy, on the effects upon the gender dimension of your economic policy. Before concluding this introduction, I would say that, for instance, in the Swedish budget bill, we have for a number of years introduced that the general financial outline, which is the framework for the budget, should always include a special appendix describing in detail the effects upon men and women upon of the budget proposals regarding, for instance, tax adjustments or increase or decreases of allowances, etc. So those are the principles I would like to begin with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I think you outlined very many interesting and relevant things for liberal policies, as you say, and we can come back to that. I mean, because we have let's say examples from different levels of the administration also that are very good to be studying. Thank you, for State Secretary, for this beginning. And now I will give the floor to Nadia Nahman. As I mentioned, you are Chief of Staff of the President of the Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea. Unfortunately, you are not able to live in your country, but you have been following Liberal International for many years and working with one of our vice presidents of the bureau, the president of your political party. You yourself have been studying public law in many countries, both in Morocco, at the secondary university in Strasbourg, and now you are in London, I understood. So what would you say from your experience of governance and political work? What are the principles you would like to outline, Nadia?
Thank you very much, Astrid, for having me. I would like to thank Liberal International for its support to gender equality for this webinar. And please allow me to start with general reflections, as my predecessor did. Promoting gender-responsive budgeting as a tool for women's advancements requires a comprehensive understanding of the context, the challenges faced by women in terms of access to education, healthcare, employment, property rights, and participation in decision-making processes, division of labor, women's time burden, the impact of gender budgeting, responsive budgeting, and particularly the demonstration of a link between gender budgeting, gender inequality, and growth. Gender budgeting efforts are based on two important premises. First, that addressing gender inequalities and women's needs can have a positive influence on growth, and therefore fiscal policies that are directed to these purposes are beneficial. Second, because fiscal policies influence economic and social outcomes, they can contribute to gender equality. So reciprocally, gender inequality has an effect on growth, while growth has an effect on gender inequality. For instance, in my country, Guinea, reports estimate that reducing gender inequality could accelerate per capita GDP growth by up to 0.6 points per year, or 10.2% overall by 2033. So closing gender gaps in employment, for instance, could boost GDP per capita by 10% across all regions. That's very important. And I would like to maybe emphasize the fact that GRB, or gender responsive budgeting, involves thinking about the gender impact at all stages of the budget process in order for gender to be reflected in budget decisions. I'm going to say something very obvious. Budget is one of the most important policy tools of the government, right? So given that revenue raising and expenditure patterns reflect political priorities. So why is gender responsive budgeting needed? It's very important, especially for our West African region. And I think that maybe in the following discussions, I would like to put a good emphasis on the case of Rwanda, based on lessons to learn from this experience. So why is gender responsive needed? To me, due to the social roles that women and men perform in certain social and cultural contexts, the priorities with regard to public spending most likely differ. And this is one of the reasons why we should look at the budget from a gender perspective. And in the countries with the most success in gender budgeting, there was a clear consensus that gender budgeting would contribute not only to the well-being of females, but to the welfare of a society as a whole. It benefits everyone. So I think that it's this very pragmatic dimension that we should emphasize. Of course, gender equality is a human right. Of course, it's a matter of justice, but not only a matter of justice, because what a waste, to put women behind. Due to the tremendous contribution they can bring. So let's have a look at the socio-economic status of women in West African countries in a context marked by discrimination and societal abuses. To me, this dimension is very important. Despite the assertion of equality between men and women before the law, and the rights of women, in practice, the legal provisions are often violated or at least circumvented. And I'm going to take Guinea, my country, as a leading example, even though West Africa cannot be considered as a monolithic bloc, but there are some commonalities, right? So we are facing deeper rooting sociocultural norms and beliefs embedded in customary and religious practices that often limit the full application of national legal and policy frameworks to advance gender equality. So, for example, in Guinea, and it's the same for Côte d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Mali, for law lands grants equal right to women and men, customary practices prohibit women from inheriting land, as an example. So, and there is this cultural attitude and belief constrict real men to be heads of house, the breadwinners, the economic providers, while household chores and childcare are the sole responsibility of women and girls. So this dimension is very important to highlight, right? And in the financial realms, social norms impact women's control over income and expenditures. Men may in our societies, men may welcome women's financial contribution. However, some men see their status as head of the household threatened by an economically powerful wife. So gender norms put women at a disadvantage in their access and capacity to use productive resources such as land, agricultural inputs and services, financial services, and technologies. So getting back to the gender responding budgeting application, there is no one-fits-all application of gender responsive budgeting. There's some very good example coming from Rwanda that I would like to emphasize, but allow me to, I couldn't agree more with Martin when he said that we have to emphasize the disaggregated statistics. That's very important because the disaggregated gender data is critical, as Martin said, for putting the spotlight on inequality and underscoring the need to realize the rights of poor and marginalized women, because this dimension gave us information that aggregated data do not. So I think, Astrid, I can stop here, and yeah, so we can maybe continue and address the main examples we have in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as you said, where, for instance, let's say that the customary practices can jeopardize what is in law, and then here, if I understood correctly, let's say also hereditary practices who in de facto is the ruler of the land resources or something similar, and also access to financial service. If you are talking about empowering women, that's certainly is most important. What would you, State Secretary, let's say, frame as examples when you have in your legislation and in the budgetary framework that there would need to be, let's say, information on the how the budgeting is how the gender responsible budgeting is affecting. As you said, the information needs to be there, but do you have examples of how it has influenced then further discussions or let's say aggregating resources to different sectors? Because of course you can. Could you have examples? And I think we have a challenging situation, because if we wouldn't, we need also to, I think, go much in detail. We cannot only on the general level say, okay, we put the chapters of a country's budget together, because unfortunately the, let's say, difficult geopolitical situation might make it look like when the resources for some of the sectors near the women would be decreasing. But how should we take, for instance, now the increased resources for military into account when we are doing gender responsive budgeting? But if you have some concrete examples of what has the information and the data led to as policy choices. If I be very concrete, very concrete examples, and of course, please comment on each other. That is very helpful also. But State Secretary, please.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to say that I completely share the comments and perspectives that Nadia presented, and I think it's also very inspiring that we see we see so many similarities and so many situations where the same questions arise and the same political obstacles need to be addressed, regardless of region or country. So, and that is once more why I think that it is very good that the Liberal International is hosting this webinar. These are challenges that we share globally. I would like to give one example when it comes to gender responsive budgeting or gender responsive policy making. As I said, we have since a number of years a specific rule that the Swedish Bureau for Statistics for official statistics should always present its individual-based statistics on a gender disaggregated basis. And when it comes to economic empowerment, we see a very interesting and also a very unsettling pattern. When it comes to wage earning, we see and we present the findings in our budget bill as part of our general description of the economic standards of Swedish households, be it single adult households or two-person households. For a number of years we see the good thing is that we see for a number of years the wage earning gap between men and women has decreased. not every year, but as seen as a long-term trend, we see that quite clearly. That is both due to combating gender discrimination on the labor market, but also due to the fact that the number of women participating in the labor market and working full time has increased quite significantly. But when it comes to ownership, we do not see the same pattern, unfortunately. We see that when it comes to income from capital, interest or dividends from stock earning, you see that men have significantly higher incomes from capital than women do, and also when it comes to ownership of either land or houses, and we see, by the way, also the same pattern when it comes to male and female entrepreneurs, that women who are running businesses have a significantly lower access to private risk capital than men running businesses do. So what has this led to? This has led to, for instance, that we have now in the latest let's see, a couple of months ago, actually, we gave an assignment to the Swedish Gender Equality Agency relating to financial gender equality and ownership on the housing market, which is, in the Swedish perspective, most individual households have, well, the housing market stands for the major part of their private savings. They put it in their houses or their condominiums, so to speak. And so this assignment is to bring out more policy suggestions in how to create a stronger financial gender equality on the housing market, both on the owned housing market and on the rented housing market from a gender equality perspective. Also, since we see that wage incomes, we need to widen the scope and not only look at wage earning, we need to look at the full scope of the income of an individual to see the whole situation when it comes to financial gender equality. We have also given the Swedish National Mediation Institute a government mandate to carry out gender equality analyses of both salary income and other incomes like income from capital, and do that on a bi-yearly basis so that we can see the long-term trend and use that knowledge in order to formulate policy initiatives in order to promote gender equality also in the financial perspective. Those are two examples I would like to give on how disaggregated statistics can be used in order to introduce new policy initiatives. But we still need, but of course we need to continue, of course.
Thank you very much, and I really think that these two initiatives are something that we would need to also to spearhead and to make known in the liberal family, because the question of also access to private risk capital, for everybody is very, very important. And you can also, I think that in quite many countries you can see the same trend, as you said, that males have better access to that. Of course, we have here also maybe a bit in the background access to education, access to innovation. You have those questions a bit so that females don't always have go to the education where you can get, let's say, high income entrepreneurship or something. But that's very interesting initiative. Nadia, what would you say? Do you say? I think that you mentioned similar perspectives in your country, exactly on the access to finances. And let me also congratulate you, Sweden, that you see, at least for the wage earning, that the cap is decreasing. We in the country I live in, Finland, your neighbor, it is decreasing at such slow pace. People are saying it would take, let's say, 50 years at least. I don't know the latest statistic before the gap is closed. And in spite of having a tradition, well, women in Finland work more full time maybe than our sisters in neighboring countries. But Nadia, please, these two initiatives that Martin mentioned, what could they be used in your circumstances?
Yeah, thank you very much, Astrid. That's the problem in Guinea. We are suffering a huge lack of gender disaggregated data. Yeah, that data is not available. And the common challenges that I have identified that are related to my country, mainly limited budgetary allocation for gender-specific programs, and lack of gender disaggregated data, as I mentioned, and inadequate capacity for gender analysis in budgeting processes, and limited capacity to implement gender responsive planning and budgeting. And to me, there are three main problems Guinea are dealing with. It's weak accountability mechanism, non-existent. To me, it's very important because the government are not holding accountable for anything, and limited capacity to deliver gender responsive services. But last but not least, we have this other problem in Guinea is corruption. Corruption as a cancer metastasized in all spheres of life. So the money is just not available. So when it's collected, is allocated for personal considerations and not for the common interest, for the general interest. So to me, it's of course we can talk about gender-sensitive budgeting, but in Guinea, we have reaching a state of a level, a scale, the magnitude of corruption is undermining all that we can do in terms of gender responsive budgeting. So that's why I would like maybe in order to share successful experience, to mention Rwanda. That can inspire Guinea and a lot of West African countries, and why not in Europe. To me, it's very important. The first thing, Astrid, to me, is the political will. It's the political commitment at the highest level. It's very important, and that's why the gender responsive budgeting is a success in Rwanda. Of course, it has its main limits, but we could consider that is a success because the initiative in Rwanda was premised on the view that every ministry was responsible for ensuring that women's needs were integrated into its areas of responsibility. That's important, and the Ministry of Finance has a strong leadership to pave the way for his colleague to say, okay, we have this on the table. And another thing should be mentioned in the case of Rwanda is it's the existence of an enacted organic budget law. And that enacted organic budget law makes it mandatory for the government to include gender budget statement as part of the documentation submitted in the budget process. And more particularly, monitoring takes place to ensure that all agencies of the government adhere to key features of a budget. Because in our countries, the main problem is we can have the most beautiful and more relevant legal arsenal, but we have, a stark contrast between the law and what is going on the ground. So we found that in Rwanda, Minister of Finance is taking the lead, and they have mandated the other ministries or all the level of government responsible for social welfare or women's development to address gender gaps and women's needs in their budgets. And I think that it's very, very important to put a great emphasis on the role that MPs can play in gender responsive budgeting, as well as a civil society and academics, why not, and women's association and organizations. So yeah, to me, and I think that if I have to copy, to replicate an example at the Guinean level, that will be the Rwanda example, as well as Morocco. I think that Morocco started very earlier in 2030 when Morocco launched, with the support of UN Women, the Center of Excellence for Gender Responsive Budgeting. So that was a great initiative, a very important tool that provides lawmakers with insights into how public policies are working toward gender equality on a local and national level. So what else can I mention in the case of Rwanda is that to me, I think that is very important to have monitoring and assessment of a policy in order to proceed to some adjustment for future, to some adjustment, I mean. So yeah, I think that there's a very interesting, of course, the representation of women in decision-making process are not necessarily the answer to everything, but it does help. It's the case of Rwanda, where women constitute about 2/3 of a lower house of parliament, and they are well represented in judiciary and cabinet position as provincial governors, district council members, and mayors in charge of social affairs. So, and the constitution of Rwanda also provides the basis for gender responsive law across a variety of areas, including inheritance, land, and property right. So, another things to mention in the case of Rwanda, Rwanda established a Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion and a gender monitoring office. It's all about monitoring. To me, it's very important. And the National Women's Council. So there's a lot to say, but I think that I will stop here for the discussions.
Thank you very much. And as you have both mentioned, I mean, it is access to information, disaggregated data, but also the capacity of Parliament to monitor and to hold accountable these very, very central liberal principles that we are talking about. I would also when we are thinking about what is successful, I would argue that already the requirement that you must think in the budget process, how do things affect you, or how do affect women and men? We had, when I was a minister here in Finland, we had the same rule. So the body of equality talked to everybody, the responsible ministers, before we put forward our budgetary proposal to government decision and then to Parliament. Have you thought through your measures? how will it impact men and women? Please introduce to Parliament this, a sequence in your budget presentation, how it is, and as soon as it, as you said, at the highest level, when it comes from the highest level, a requirement that you should think through, then you will have also the some result, some effect. You reflect on your policy, and actually, I mean, as we are liberals, we are also very much engaged in fighting the climate change and working for climate justice. I think it's very, very central now if we have in our budgets, especially when we are trying to mitigate the effects, that there is gender sensitive budgeting, and we are thinking, because we know that let's say the different tasks, reality that is happening, it has different access. Water is behaving in a different way, and women are quite often responsible to ensure that there is water and the household is functioning. This is the reality. So climate change sensitive budgeting, I also would think. But I would also ask, I think it's what you said, Nadia, about let's say that things might be not reaching women. I think in the partnerships we have between poorer and richer countries, and I don't want to talk about let's say traditional words we have had for development, cooperation, development assistance, but the partnerships. I think it's very important that at least the country where you are saying that you have a human rights based policy, development, cooperation, partnership, the partner should be aware of the sensitivities of gender equality, because if you are not that, you will miss out a huge opportunity for development. And I would I think we also would need to have a checklist when a country does cooperation with the other one. Are the hereditary rights working in practice? Will women have equal access to financing also in the projects you are doing? I mean, then some cases it can be very, very humanitarian assistance, and in war situations I also have felt that we have very seldom guarantees that the help is really reaching those who are the most need. But before we try to wrap up, I would say we mentioned that we have also, let's say, at different effects at different levels. And Martin kind of promised us to mention also maybe the regional level or the European level or the municipal level. And I know you are active also at the municipal level, Martin. Is there something you would mention? Because I remember that because of course it's different. What are the responsibilities of the municipal level? But in my country, municipal level is quite much responsible for roads and for sports. And it was clear that in the sports budget in our country, much more money was put on sports that are mostly boys' sports. It's not so clear anymore that what is boys and girls sports, but it was quite clearly that, and we have been working now that it would not be detrimental for the sports that girls are more active in, or that the conditions where girl teams can play would not be worse than when boys are playing. So that's one of the things. But when you look through with this way of disaggregating data and having the gender sensitive budgeting in place. But Martin, Do you have examples from different layers of government also?
Thank you, Astrid. And first of all, just to follow up very briefly on the comment to your something you said previously, I would just like to make clear that I am also very impatient about the development in Sweden. I mentioned some examples that were encouraging, but I am also very impatient to hasten the pace. There are a lot of things that where we definitely need to do more homework. As I said, this is a common challenge for us all in all countries and all regions. I think that on a local level, if I look at it from my background as a local politician in my home city, on a local level, it is maybe even more apparent what Nadia said, that you cannot always have disaggregated statistics on your desk before you reach conclusions. There are simply no mechanisms to establish such data, and we all know the practical and financial obstacles to reach to have the data, even though they are important. The example that you gave, Astrid, all about sports, illustrates something I would like to mention as also a very important principle to enter into consultation to make sure that the voices of both women and men, boys and girls are heard within the decision-making process, and it is also very important that is the principle that you should have as a guiding principle also before you enter into the decision-making phase, where you still collect facts about the present situation in, for example, your hometown or your home municipality, and that goes regardless of whether you're responsible for the local public transport or if you happen to be in the governing political board for the healthcare in the part of your in your part of the country or whatever. That you can always use your political position to demand from the administrators to know as much as possible about how you have what methods you have used in order to analyze the possible outcomes for men and women of a specific policy choice. And there you have the importance of civil society, which Nadia also mentioned. I think there is a very strong potential to bring up the pace in the work with gender equality, to strengthen the dialogue with relevant groups in civil society, and make sure that policymakers on the local level or on the national level have a consultation process with civil society before making policy decisions. It's not a question of replacing the political or parliamentary decision-making process. It's a matter of reaching out to the persons that are actively involved or in a very concrete way touched by a possible policy decision, and include their voices in the policy making process. And that can be done both on the local level and for that way also, of course, on national and in my case a European level. Thank you.
And actually, thank you. We have two questions from the in the chat. And the second question was actually that how can civil society organizations and grassroots movements actively engage with governments to advocate for the adoption and effective implementation of gender-responsive budgeting? And you, Martin, answered this question really. No, I'm afraid that Nadia disappeared here. And the other question that was put to us: what mechanism could be put in place to ensure accountability and transparency in the allocation and utilization of resources or earmarks for gender equality initiatives within national budgets? That's a tricky question, because of course it is important to see what that resources are used for, what they are intended for, if they are earmarked. And I think what would be your answer, Martin? Nadia, I don't see Nadia, but Martin, please.
Thank you, and hopefully Nadia will return, and I will quote something that she also stressed, the importance of accountability. This is of course extremely important, and it is linked to the wider question of transparency of information and the possibility for both independent media and civil society and voters in general to scrutinize the decisions made by the decision makers in the political system. I would like to stress that, so the question of transparency is tremendously important, and it does not only hold true for the specific funds that are earmarked for gender equality projects. The same goes. It is equally important when it comes to make sure that the data that is presented, be it on a very general level or on a very fine-tuned level, about the impact for men and women of the budget decisions in general, for instance, the fiscal system, or how money is allocated to infrastructure projects, for instance. So the question is highly relevant, and of course is something that we as liberals care very strongly for, about that the public should have access to relevant information about the decisions made, but also about what data has influenced the decision makers, so that the political system can be properly scrutinized and monitored from independent media and from the public in general.
Thank you, Martin. And excuse me now, all friends. Our friend Nadia had to leave for another appointment, but I'm sorry that I had not noticed this message. But she sends her best wishes, and I think we can wrap up this discussion. But let me say also that I think it's very important always, as you said, that decision makers and the public, they have access to the information, and they know where the budget is going. We cannot stress that much enough. But it also would be very good to have, let's say, also evaluation that you get the money, and that evaluation should be made public. But thank you, Martin, and thank you very much for sharing the concrete examples. And we are also very happy for the examples that Nadia gave us, and we will try to condense them so that they can be helpful for our friends in different parts of of the world when we are trying to work because we know that when gender equality is taken into account, then our policies are more efficient. And as Nadia and you were saying, then we have better growth and better use of the resources we have in our societies, because the human resources are better used, and that is for the benefit of the society. And thank you very much, and I wish you still a fruitful week there in New York. And I also wish you very much luck to counter the pushback that we also see on gender equality questions. We know that there are forces that they might be the gender equality or equality in general is the first area where let's say the dark forces are trying to stand back on human rights, on democracy, and all the principles that we hold dear. So thank you very much, and have a successful week there in New York. And I'm very, 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 very happy that you shared your time with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for moderating this webinar, and thank you everyone who has followed this or is watching afterwards. And as I said, this is this is something that we share as a common commitment for liberals throughout the world. So I'm very happy that the Liberal International has hosted this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.